Well, the top story at this hour is, of course, the budget proposal for Illinois by Governor Quinn. If you were joining us live at noon, you saw that story live as it unfolded. The governor addressing a joint session of the state legislature, saying that in order to present a balanced budget, it's going to require up to $5 billion in borrowed funds that need to be paid back at some point, obviously. And he's also talking about making some $2 billion in across-the-board cuts, but though primarily to education. He offered one sort of solution off of the official record of his proposal, and that being a tax increase of some sort, something that lawmakers in the past have never wanted to discuss, have said we can do this without a tax increase. It's not the right thing to do, but plus it's an election year. Lawmakers don't want to be campaigning on tax increases. The governor called for them to potentially consider a 1% income tax surcharge to restore the money to education funding that would otherwise have to be cut. He said because those funds are going away, drying up some $1 billion in federal stimulus funds that go away as of July 1st. So the state doesn't have the money to put that money back in checks. So he's calling for an income tax surcharge as a consideration. Other than that, if they don't want to go that route, he's talking about heavy borrowing. Joining us now to discuss more about what all of this could mean for taxpayers, that's you and us, all of us really, John O'Hara of the Illinois Policy Institute, which calls itself a leading voice for economic liberty and government accountability. John, I guess first of all we should say you guys are basically sort of a research watchdog type of group. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So you listened to what the governor now said. What do you think about this? Let's start with the unpopular idea of a tax increase, this tax surcharge.
Well, I think, Monica, you put it very well, that what does this mean for taxpayers? And Governor Quinn mentioned that families across Illinois are sitting around their kitchen tables in tough economic times saying, they're already cutting their vacations, they're already tightening their belts. Many folks may have lost their jobs or lost overtime, and he's right there. But where he misses the point is that by asking for a 1% income tax hike, he's asking Illinois taxpayers, Illinois families, to make the cuts that he's not willing to make in Springfield.
Well, he did talk about $2 billion worth of cuts, and he's made some cuts in the past. Where would your organization at this point suggest there could be further cuts? Now, I have gone online and read some of your stuff, and I know you found some interesting places where money is being spent, and probably foolishly when you had something, if it's accurate, some $2,800 the state spends a year on, say, hot sauce. Obviously, we could get rid of that if that's indeed an expense.
Right.
But does this add up to billions of dollars that you'd need to otherwise borrow or raise taxes to get that kind of revenue?
We actually found in our recent Piglet booklet that we put out $350 million worth of savings, and it adds up. It's, as you said, things like hot sauce, quail preservation. It would be laughable if it wasn't such an egregious misuse of taxpayer dollars. And it's not just the savings that come from things like that. It's the kind of government that produces that sort of waste. In addition, one of the problems that, the governor mentioned, kicking the can down the road, is not something we want to do, and I couldn't agree with him more. The problem is his budget and his solutions, quote-unquote solutions, don't address the systemic issues that got us where we are today. In 2008, we had record revenue. We spent it away, and here we are today, and he's talking about raising taxes. One of the systemic issues is the mechanisms that allow a government to waste things on quail preservation, on hot sauce. And another major issue that's not being addressed is pension reform. Pension reform is crowding out core government services. It's not right, and it's not right to not tighten the belts in Springfield and put the onus on Illinois taxpayers to make further cuts, painful cuts at home. Well,
to be fair to the governor now, John, other watchdog groups in Illinois that are at times seen as being conservative and in the past have said, no tax increase. You got to cut the spending. No tax increase. Other watchdog groups, the Civic Federation, the Chicago-based Center for Tax and Budget Accountability, they're all saying that right now we're at a point where you've got to raise taxes. It's fiscally irresponsible not to. But the Illinois Policy Institute still saying no to a tax hike.
Absolutely not. It doesn't address, we have a spending problem in Illinois, not a revenue problem. It doesn't address those systemic issues. And next week, the Institute will be putting out an alternative budget that does not involve raising taxes, but balances the budget without crowding out core government services.
Well, clearly, the governor stated that, you could balance the budget. You could get rid of $13 billion in potential red ink, by doing what he called draconian hatcheting to the budget, where you really are cutting everything from education to health care and on down, where the person, the family sitting at home now with no job that you alluded to earlier, and worrying about, geez, how am I going to make this work? They're going to even have fewer state-supported services to help them out in their time of need due to these huge cuts. So where do you draw the line?
I think the governor's presenting a bit of a false option there between draconian cuts and tax hikes. There's a lot in there, and again, as some of the things we outlined, some of the absurd things we outlined, the pension.
And he called for pension reform. In fairness, today he called for that.
We'll see what the details are forthcoming on that. But when government workers are getting paid about 12 to 15% more than the rest of folks that work in Illinois, there's a lot of room for reform there. And they need to be able to come to the table and talk about renegotiating some of those contracts. And the pensions is a huge part of that. And as I said, next week we'll be putting out an alternative budget that lays that out in great detail.
Well, I'll tell you what, John, it would be interesting perhaps to have you back at that point and talk about some of the points that you're looking at where you feel, when you've looked at the governor's budget proposal and what you guys come up with, where further cutting could be done that wouldn't really cut into the core fabric of what Illinois is about in terms of families and individuals and having a quality of life.
I look forward to joining you again.
Okay, John O'Hara, thanks so much for being with us. He's from the Illinois Policy Institute, one of the groups, state watchdog groups, that's weighing in on what's going to be happening here in Illinois in terms of a budget. And, of course, ultimately, it's up to lawmakers, the people we put in office, to vote one way or the other. So, John, thanks much. And we're going to take a quick break.